Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on the program where we cover multiple live trials and legal stories in the news today all across the country. And today is no exception. We have multiple live events, a lot to break down, so let's get started. All right, so this is cross-examination of a defense witness who testified yesterday about how Jones felt that his kids were a threat to him, that they were out to get him. And this irrational line of thinking, you can see why the defense put this witness on, but under cross-examination, we're getting a different flavor. Well, joining me right now is attorney Jessica Ramirez to break it down. So you see what they're doing here. I mean, they're trying to say this guy wasn't insane. He was just evil. Am I looking at it the right way?
Absolutely. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to prove that this guy knew right from wrong, that he was focused, that he was engaged, that he was intelligent and clear to understand. And he's saying that through testimony, that he didn't appear flat, that he wasn't hearing any voices. So I think that they're really setting it up for when the expert testifies and says he was insane. No, he wasn't. Look at this officer. Look what he's saying. There was nothing insane. He was clear and intelligent.
To build the insanity defense, they're blocks, right? And the first thing you'd have to establish is that the defendant suffered from a mental disease or defect. That was what we kind of saw yesterday with the MRI scans, talking about abnormalities in his skull and his brain and the hippocampus. But just because someone might have some sort of brain abnormality or mental disease doesn't mean they qualify for the insanity defense, right?
That's definitely correct. And again, I think one of the questions that the prosecutor asked was, do you think he can turn it on and off? Again, they're setting it up. This is a guy that knows how to turn it on and off, and when he's speaking to the expert defense that's going to testify later on, that's what he was doing. Do not believe the hype.
It's interesting you should say that because yesterday the neuroradiologist who testified said, hey, listen, I can't diagnose him with schizophrenia. There's a correlation between the findings, these injuries, and schizophrenia. And you might have somebody who has issues in terms of emotion and intelligence, but they could still lead a functioning normal life. They might be a little different. I mean, we see kind of people all the time.
That is correct.
And that's the problem. So what does the defense need to do as they move forward?
Again, it's going to be expert heavy. They're going to have to tear down the expert. When it's an insanity defenses, it really is about the expert. How much time did the expert take with the defendant and what tests were done. So really, I think it's going to boil down to the expert. They can go back and forth as to the appearance of the witness at the time that he was questioned, but it's really going to come down to experts.
And we've already seen one of our other live trials, Stephen Burgoyne. The insanity defense didn't work for him in Vermont. We'll have to see if it works for the defendant here in South Carolina. Jessica, so here's the thing. I mean, they're trying to recover from this witness, but the biggest thing is what the prosecution got this witness to admit, that the defendant said, this is the defendant's words, "What do you mean I did the right thing? I killed my kids." Doesn't that just show he knows right from wrong, which is the test for insanity?
Absolutely, and I think it shows that he was being harsh, too, when describing his children, these victims that are angels. And I think this witness did a good job for the prosecution. It proved premeditation. He bought trash bags. He packed his passport. He was concerned about how he was going to be perceived in his mugshot. Again, which shows rational behavior. It proves that he understood right from wrong, which is really the crux of this case. Does he understand, or did he understand? And I think he did a great job. And the defense, all they can do is attack the reporting. Oh, well, didn't you write 70 pages and only you wrote a paragraph regarding this conversation? And then again, the defense bringing him back to, well, wasn't he crying? He was emotional. I know.
Why does it matter, the emotions, though? I mean, why does that help an insanity defense?
Well, I think that we, as defense attorneys, they have to look for anything that makes their client likable as well. Because it is an emotional. These victims are children. They're really, again, the true definition of a victim. So I think you want to make your client look likable, that he is emotional, that he's not this harsh, terrible guy, so that he does want to go back to, well, listen, it wasn't this flat, it wasn't this harsh.
Well, look, I mean, just to give everybody an idea here, so the test for insanity would be that he, didn't know that this was right or wrong. That's a basic way of saying it. Now, there's another part of South Carolina law that even if he knew what he did was wrong, he could not conform his actions to the law. Now, generally, when we say that second part of the test, that would still meet the threshold for insanity. But South Carolina is very different. They have something called guilty but mentally ill, where if it's my understanding, Jessica, he would go to prison. He would be treated for mental illness. Again, if the jury says, you know what, he knew right from wrong, but he couldn't control his actions. So they could find him guilty but mentally ill. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is my understanding as well.
That witness has just been excused. Jessica, at the end of the day, helpful witness for the defense or not?
I think he was a helpful witness for sure. I think he proved his mental stability or his mental state at the time. Again, he was intelligent. He was not flat.
No, for the defense, this is a defense witness.
I'm sorry. No, I don't think it was very helpful for the defense.
Let's reverse that.
I'm sorry about that.
Like, oh.
No, I don't think it was very helpful for the defense. Again, it didn't show that that he knew that he knew right from wrong. It did not prove that at all, I don't think. So I don't think he was helpful. If anything, it was helpful more for the prosecution.
And you know, tell me, like, just from a general perspective, from a practical point of view, he went on the stand yesterday for the defense, provided some good context about maybe some odd behavior, this kind of idea about a mental illness. Then the jury goes home, they sleep, they come back. He's now under cross-examination by the prosecution. Doesn't the defense lose something a little bit?
Yes and no. I think that the case, I think he wasn't a great witness to begin with for the defense. Yes, he does prove that there was bizarre behavior, and usually a lot of these insanity cases are really bizarre. That's why they claim insanity. So yes, absolutely. And again, here in redirect, the defense attorney comes back and, well, didn't he hang out with the bodies for a while?
Right.
Didn't he stay with them and pray with them? Again, going back to, let's not forget this bizarre behavior,
Sure.
which is driving around with bodies in your car and praying over them. But again, does it prove bizarre behavior? For sure.
Yeah.
Does it? Can they show through this witness that he knew right from wrong? I think that this witness shows that he definitely knew right from wrong.
And again, just to reiterate, one of the things the prosecution got this witness to say was that the defendant said to him, "What do you mean I did the right thing? I killed my kids." And if you're talking about whether or not a defendant knew from right from wrong, that statement really doesn't help the defense. But I'll tell you what, let's just go back to when this witness was cross-examined yesterday by the state, in case you missed it. How is the defense going to recover from this? Because if you have this witness who's testifying about what the defendant was doing and what he was saying and indicating that he knew right from wrong, what kind of expert does the defense have to say, oh, well, discount everything else that happened, jury, discount everything else, because this guy, he really doesn't know what the difference between right and wrong? I mean, what can they do to recover from this?
It's going to be very difficult for the defense. Absolutely. They are going to have to get an expert that's going to prove that he had a mental breakdown that day, that particular day, and that he didn't know right from wrong that day. And this is definitely possible
in that period
of time.
And legally that can work. You can have a psychotic episode at the time of the killing, nothing before, nothing after, and that could be insanity.
And that's what they're going to have to prove, that it was a very short period of time where he had this mental breakdown, and absolutely that does qualify for an insanity defense. Is the jury going to buy it? No, I don't believe they are. We don't buy insanity defenses, especially when children are murdered. And again, I think he's doing a great job of, he knew right from wrong. He wasn't, even when he was questioned, he was very lucid. He was able to intelligently describe what happened. This is not someone that said, I blacked out. I have no idea.
You know, it's interesting. Whenever I hear these cases, I'm always skeptical of these insanity defenses, but then as soon as the defense starts, I start giving a different perspective. Yesterday, when they called that neuroradiologist to talk about the depressed skull fractures and the head trauma and how there's a correlation to schizophrenia and how it could impact someone's memory and emotions and intelligence, I was starting to say, okay, maybe they have something here. What did you think of that?
I think that they do have something, but however, if you have a brain injury or you're schizophrenic, that does not mean you're going to murder 5 children that are innocent. Mm-hmm. So I think that absolutely there is a correlation. I can't be blind to that. I think everything does factor in, but to make that jump because of his brain injury, because he's schizophrenic, he did this, he then didn't know right from wrong, I don't think they're going to be able to correlate that.
And the defense still, as you said, has to bring out their experts to diagnose him, talk about it, and then you believe the prosecution has their own expert witness just waiting to come through. So this battle is not over yet.
It's going to be the battle of the experts.
We hear see it so much time. Now, it doesn't work all the time. In fact, I don't think I've covered a case here on the Law&Crime Network where the insanity defense has worked. We just covered Burgoyne, and that one didn't work out so well for him. We covered John Johnchuk, didn't work there. But maybe this one's different. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I'll tell you one thing I do know. We have to take a break. And when we come back, we have a lot more to talk about our live trials today. Stay tuned right after this.